wanted to go to a coffee house. So it's all about the atmosphere, what they get to do there, feel there, see there. And health conscious is what I'm calling my last group. This was the group where it was all about reduction in fat, either reduced or fat-free, and no calorie sweeteners, either natural or not. They wanted something to be a little bit more healthy for them. So this is very interesting as far as what marketers or product developers would want to target. Now let's talk about the lactose intolerant group. I had 117 self-defined lactose intolerant consumers. Remember I told you I asked behavior questions ahead of time and demographic questions? They told me ahead of time if they perceive themselves as lactose intolerant or not. You also remember we had milk-based had the highest utility. Well, that's because if you do the math, from 721, I had 604 lactose tolerant consumers. So they were driving that choice. So let's look at just the intolerant. When we looked at just the intolerant, they strongly preferred lactose-free milk over lactose-free not milk-based. In other words, they would go for lactate over soy milk. Now what I did with this result is I put it in a market simulator, which I mentioned to you earlier. And I built two beverages that had the same place, coffee house, same reduction in fat, same sweetener, natural, and same flavor. And those were 4 of the top levels for the attributes. So I'm building like the power beverage that differed by the lightener. We have lactose-free milk-based and lactose-free not milk-based. So I'm giving them the most positive beverage possible, and I just want to see, does lactose-free milk make a difference? And when I put this into the simulator, I found that 56.4% of the lactose intolerant group would prefer lactose-free milk. And this was significantly different from the 43.6% that would prefer a soy milk or something that is not milk-based but still lactose-free. So, take-home messages. We need to focus on indulgent recipes. We also need to focus on health and nutrition, because as food scientists, we're not going to focus on the location consumers. That's not us. But we can focus on the other two groups. And we know that lactose-free milk from this survey is a competitor for soy. That was their perception. So we can work on making beverages using lactose-free milk. So in conclusion, choice-based conjoint is a very useful tool for determining consumer valued attributes. It has widespread application in the food and beverage industry, so you can come up with your own projects using this. And it can be a very useful tool for product developers working in conjunction with sensory scientists to make products that have a better chance of being successful on the market. So with that, I'd like to thank Dr. Mary Ann Drake, my advisor, for giving me the latitude to really explore my own hypotheses with this project. I'd also like to thank Dr. Kanapon Lepetron, who is a marketing person in New York who works with us a lot, and he was really helpful in the lactose-free development of this survey. Dr. Fogading and Dr. Sanders, who are members of my committee, who have been very integral in helping me shape my research. Drake Lab, of course, and Sawtooth Software, who granted me the software. I wrote a grant and I was awarded it, so I was able to do this type of analysis with this many consumers. And with that, I'd like to entertain any questions you may have.
You ready for lights up?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going to take a sip of water and fire away.
There you go. Question time.
Yeah, Kelsey.
What's the cost difference between soy milk and lactose-free milk so that the coffee houses and the suppliers, restaurant?
Actually, I do not know. I do not know that. From my initial investigation on what would be the main difference is that the soy milk is very shelf-stable, aseptically packaged, and that's why they like to use that a lot. And the lactose-free milk would have to be refrigerated and has a shelf life. As far as the cost differential, I can try to find that out, because off the top I do not know. That's a great question. Other questions?
What's a market simulator?
The market simulator is essentially a statistical method, and as far as the statistics behind it, that's where my knowledge is a little bit less. But it takes those utility values, the utility values I showed you on those individual tables, and it then values, I'm using the word value twice, I apologize, basically weights them, takes the different weights of the different utilities based upon how many consumers we're taking into each of those from your population size, and then ascribes based upon the average utility for this product and the average utility for this product, what's the percentage difference of consumers that we're valuing this more than that. That is the limit of my statistical knowledge of market
So
simulator.
it's a software-based simulator that somebody came up with that you just used before.
This is true. This is a software simulator from Sawtooth. This is specifically designed by Sawtooth Software to go in conjunction with their choice-based conjoint software. So as soon as you download the data, everything is compatible. It's a great question, Dr. Davis.
So, when someone was taking this, I should just do that, with all these things,
Conjoint survey.
survey. Someone's doing this survey, how many iterations do they go through of choosing, their, when we did the example in the room, we picked one. Do you do that just, does each participant just do that once, or do you do that multiple times?
That's a great question. So basically, how many times do you go through those choice tasks? Remember the definition, that big question. It depends on the survey, you can set it differently, but the survey that I launched allowed you to go through 14 different iterations, including one 15th iteration that was fixed, and that was another way that I used to knock out anybody who was kind of guessing, because it matched another one in there. So essentially 15 different iterations, but the data analysis was only done on 14 of the iterations. And the literature from Sawtooth, the company that has designed the software, has shown that any more than 14 iterations, and it's just overwhelming for the consumer, because it's a lot of data to constantly take in how things are changing. So 14 was what I used, and 14 is also the max.
So what's the advantage in this approach, or the approach you use versus just, okay, I take my consumers, I say, here's the list of attributes I'm interested in, here's your pull down menu, I like full fat, blank, 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 and I do that once, and you move on.
It's very interesting that you're putting that out there.
Because I don't see the, well, maybe I kind of, I don't know, I just wondered what's the advantage here?
Sure. I'm gonna answer this question in two ways. First, there is a field of thought with consumer purchase intent, that if you ask a consumer directly, what do you like, they'll tell you one thing. And that if you measure it subconsciously, or when they think you're not measuring it, you'll actually get more detailed data, more accurate data, based upon what their actual choice behavior is. Because there's a stigma that consumers are not even aware of when you're being surveyed, that you're trying to get the answer right. When you take a survey, you want to be right. And so this comes in part of your answer. So they found that when asked directly, you don't get as good of a data set. That's why the other two conjoint methods that I mentioned, the ACA and the CVA, those are more direct methods. And those methods have really fallen by the wayside at the choice of choice-based conjoint. Now, the other part of your question, as far as, what would prevent them from just, here's your attributes. There is a new type of choice-based conjoint where I'm actually working on a project right now called adaptive choice-based conjoint. That the first question says, okay, build your favorite coffee beverage. And you do that. You pick I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. And then the conjoint will then design the survey based upon your answers. And then you answer a couple of those same choice tasks that look similar, and then it'll say to you, hey, I notice you've never chosen anything that has milk. Is having milk a no-go for you? And you can say yes or no, and it'll take milk out of the survey. So it learns, it adapts as you go. So by the time you're done, you actually get better data. And the project I'm working on now is comparing adaptive choice-based conjoint to a choice-based conjoint to see, do they really give me similar data, or is adaptive choice-based conjoint really better? Because it's easier on the panelists, because it's more fun, it's quicker, and you don't need as many people. That's the theory behind it, and that's something I'm trying to test.
How do you feel about the number of people you have? Is it appropriate? I'm just getting a feel for how many people need to do this.
Sure.
700 some odd people, is that
Sure.
enough? Is that gonna tell me?
Yeah, so 721 enough. According to literature and published results from marketing companies and other companies, 500 is the minimum required for a choice-based conjoint. And so I decided to go way past that and went almost to 800. And after a while, people just aren't taking your survey after you send out a link. And so that's why I cut it off there. And then after I removed the consumers that I was not confident on that they took the survey legitimately, I still had well over 700 consumers. So I'm very confident with my sample size. Mike?
What was the time duration of your survey?
Depends on the consumer. It really does. Anybody who was taking the survey in about 5 minutes probably wasn't paying attention. Some consumers would take a good 10, 15 minutes through it. Some consumers would take up to a half an hour. And those are consumers that I wonder, did you walk away? Did you come back? I can't tell what the consumer is doing it, but I can look at the timestamp. But the average consumer paying attention to what they're doing and taking it all the way through was somewhere around 10 minutes. It's a great question. Another reason why you don't want the survey to be too long is 10 minutes is a long time to sit in front of your computer and think and answer those questions. And after a while, I will get consumers who just start to zone out and they just, all right, I'm done. I gotta click the next one and just get done with this. And then I get drop off on good data. So choice-based conjoint, you get a lot of data, but you gotta be very careful that you're not asking too much. Other questions, Katie?
So you talked about the adaptive choice-based conjoint, but I believe when we were talking before, when each panelist did not get the same different 14 questions, it adapted as it went. Or it didn't adapt, or it just had random different combinations. How is that different from the adaptive?
Okay, so let me re-explain Katie's question. Because Katie and I had a discussion yesterday where she asked, okay, you have these 14 choice tasks. Are they the same 14 for Juanita and Echo and Maria? No. There are 300 different versions of the survey to get even more utility, more randomization, more options out there. So it's not the same 14 data sets. Otherwise, it'd be very easy to analyze. Instead, it's a random population of the different surveys, 300 of them. So when you get adaptive, it's the same thing, where you get that initial question where you're picking, and then it generates 300, you narrow it down, it generates another 300, it narrows it down. So I can't directly compare the raw data. I have to use the data analysis program built into the software to take all of those different iterations and put them into something usable for me. So I can't take that data set and put it into SAS. I can't write SAS code for it. If everybody got the same questions, I could. Great question. Dr. Lanier, you had a question.
Yeah, the diversity of your group. 500 sounds good, and I'm sure the purpose of the 500 or any number is to get greater diversity of the group, and yet you don't want it too diverse. You don't want, like you said, you screened out the ones that just didn't belong, black coffee drinkers, etc. But can you actually talk much about, you know, how many women, how many men, how many old people, how many young people, how many this, how many that?
Sure.
You have in there. Is that something that you do as part of your analysis, and is it important that you get a good representation of every one of these groups that may be important to the marketer?
No, that's a great question. Those demographic questions are absolutely something that I have and I've analyzed, and just because of time, I couldn't present.
There you go.
However, I brought it with me in case the question came up.
Okay.
I had about 75% women and about 25% men, and that is representative of the database that I used. We find that in consumer research, we have a lot more women that like to participate in taste tests and surveys than men. So that was very representative. As far as ages were concerned, from 18 all the way to 70 plus, had a very wide distribution, very evenly spread. It tapered off as we got to 70 and plus. And we find that that is also very characteristic of the database that I used, mainly because not necessarily people were on their email at that time, or possibly at that age group, they're not using email yet. Now, as far, I also looked at income, I looked at education level, mainly because I wanted to see, do I have a lot of college students answering my survey? That's what I was really looking for, to compare age and education. I also looked at ethnicity, and all of these were very representative of what we already have in the database. So I didn't see anything different there. Now, would I have something different if